Welcome to episode 48 of the Cycling Europe podcast. My name is Andrew Sykes. Now, the Cycling Europe podcast mainly features, cyclists. The interviewee in this episode, however, is first and foremost a mountaineer. But he's not just any mountaineer. His name is Tim Ralph, and he's a summiteer, a man who's climbed the 7 highest mountains on each of the continents. In the last few years, he's also taken up cycle touring and has just published a book with a familiar title for those of you who know their cycling travelogues, called A Life Accomplished from Spain to Norway on a Bike. So what can mountaineering teach us about cycle touring, and what can cycle touring teach mountaineers about climbing mountains? And what happens when an experienced mountaineer sets off to cycle from Europe's geographical southernmost point at Tarifa in Spain to its northernmost point at Nordkapp in Norway? I met up with Tim in a park near Hebden Bridge and started by asking him to introduce himself.
My name's Tim Ralph. I'm 67 years young. Live just outside Hebden Bridge in West Yorkshire, in the fire service. Originally I was in Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service, transferred into London and ended up in North Yorkshire. And probably about 17 years ago now I retired and started a new life. Thoroughly enjoying retirement, never been bored, lots to do, fantastic place to live, lots of travelling around the world, and I count myself as being very fortunate.
So basically, if you lived in either central London or somewhere in North Yorkshire and your house burnt down in the 70s or 80s, you may have been there trying to put it out.
Yeah, definitely. We would have put it out, no trying about it, definitely.
Right, okay. Now, we're not going to talk about you being a fire person,
okay, right.
Which I'm sure you've got fascinating stories to tell.
Plenty.
But we are going to talk about you being a long-distance cyclist, and specifically about your journey from Tarifa in Spain to Nordkapp in Norway, which to people who are familiar with this podcast and the website may sound fairly familiar, but we'll come to that in a few minutes. Am I right in thinking you didn't take up long-distance cycling until relatively recently, but you do have a long pedigree of adventure sport and
Yes.
sport in general?
Yeah, the cycling bit, stay with that for a moment. But cycling, obviously when you're young you can't afford a motorbike or a car, you cycle to your work, but then that's another life. But cycling became an integral part of my training for climbing, particularly high altitude climbing, for sort of vascular fitness, that sort of thing. Then it sort of morphed into its own animal, ably assisted by a couple of friends who were cyclists, one of whom introduced me to climbing many, many years ago. And unfortunately he was climbing with another friend, also called Tim, who had a nasty accident. And from that day on, this gentleman decided not to climb, but he became quite a cycling fanatic. And I probably caught it from him. So cycling has morphed into something on its own. And obviously as I've got older, high altitude climbing, which requires incredible fitness, as you get older you get less fit, and the enjoyment factor, although it's still there, wanes somewhat.
We will talk obviously about the cycling, that's why we're here, but I really want to also explore a bit about the mountaineering, because you're not just a mountaineer, you are an extremely accomplished mountaineer. You are what's known as a 7 summiter. Can you explain that?
Right. 7 summiter is a fairly small group of people in the world who have summited the highest mountain on each of the continents. My last of the 7 was Everest in 2010. But some people choose to do Everest before, and they may do a slightly easier one, like Carson's Pyramid in Papua, which is north of Australia, as their final one. It doesn't matter which order you do them in. There's also a debate as to which is the Australasian highest mountain, whether it's Carsten's Pyramid or whether it's a mountain called Kosciuszko, which is in Australia. Kosciuszko is a walk in the park, really. It's just over 2,000 metres above sea level, whereas Carsten's Pyramid, it takes about 5 flights to get there and an awful lot of climbing to get to the top. And although it's only just off the equator, it is always covered in snow. How did I get into high altitude? At the time I couldn't afford to do any high altitude climbs. So some charities, and they still do it, they invite you to raise a certain amount of money for them, and then they give you a trip, whether it's to Borneo, doing whitewater rafting and going up Kinabalu, which is a mountain in Borneo, or doing Carsten's Pyramid, or many of the others. I chose to do Kilimanjaro, and at the time I thought it was really hard, but on reflection it was probably more in my head than my body. I was finding it hard.
And how old were you when you first did that first of those 7 peaks?
Over 50 years old. The Everest, when my claim to fame, if you can call it that, or claim to lunacy, is that I was the oldest English person to have done the 7 summits, and at the time I was 57 years old, and a friend who lives just outside Ripon had been, but was no longer. We're still friends, but I don't know where that record still holds. It doesn't matter to me. But so Kilimanjaro came along, and then Elbrus in the Caucasus, and then we go to Aconcagua in South America, Denali, or Mount McKinley as it's sometimes called, should be Denali though, in Alaska, and then it just rolled from there.
And before that, before you decided to do those 7 summits, were you, I'm assuming you were a pretty experienced mountaineer on lesser peaks around the world, around Europe, in Britain even?
Yes, and again, it's important that any mountaineer who tries to go or endeavours to climb difficult high mountains should have the requisite experience. Things are changing now, and I'm sure some of the listeners will be thinking, what's going on with Everest? It's a tourist trap. It has become that for several reasons. People who have disposable income and who want to go do a bit of trophy hunting, perhaps. I'm not being judgmental here. Also, not so much the Tibetan government, and I say Tibetan, not Chinese, because Tibet is a country. Definitely the Nepalese, they charge a considerable amount in visas to actually go and climb the mountain, and it's big income for them, and they need that income. So there's always 2 sides to the argument, but sadly there will be another accident, a multiple death on Everest, because if summiting days are reduced because of weather down to just a few every season, everyone at base camp wants to summit, and there will be hundreds of people going for summit on a particular day. I'm fortunate in having got in just before that scenario really came to a head.
You're clearly an advert for maintaining a high level of fitness in middle age and beyond middle age, but do you think that fitness really has its roots in what you did when you were 20, when you were 30? Were you always an active person?
I have been always active. In part, probably as a consequence of being particularly thick and academically 2 points off stupid, but I was reasonable at sport at school. I had a couple of teachers. Geography I thoroughly enjoyed, and that's probably, I just love travelling. And the carbon footprint is an issue that we could talk about, but probably not appropriately here. But geography, history, and all sports, apart from football, and cricket. But rugby, athletics, kayaking, whitewater kayaking, yes.
And had you ever competed at a high level in any of those sports?
Rugby got to a reasonable standard. I actually captained Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service, and I was also captain for one season in North Yorkshire, and played pretty reasonable level for London Fire Brigade as well.
So obviously the long distance cycling, you've done some of that recently, but had you done any long distance cycling when you were a younger person?
No. No, definitely not.
Had it ever appealed? Had you ever thought about doing it?
No. Motorbikes, that was the aim. Get a motorbike, forget the cycle. But I don't know, it's sort of, as I mentioned earlier, it just morphed into something. And if you have an incentive, and my incentive was to climb and enjoy the climb at altitude, and to be able to do that, you really have to push yourself physically. And any means of achieving greater fitness, and for me, it might be different from other people, but cycling gives me the opportunity to get as fit as I possibly can, and that's really the goal. And then you begin to find out that you're getting better, and that pushes you on to greater things. But that's about road cycling. The touring bit is very different, and it belongs in a different camp, because when you tour, for me, it's not just the essence of cycling. It's seeing different cultures, meeting people, going to different cities, immersing yourself in the atmosphere and the culture of that particular country. So it's like, I hesitate to use it, but it's a holistic approach, really. It's not just the cycling. And people I've cycled with before, I become very apt at putting the camera from the back of my cycling shirt and taking a photograph on the move, because I know they won't stop. They will just keep going. And if I stop, I've then got to catch up with them. And then what if I want to take another photograph? So solo cycling is quite good, really, because if you go wrong, you can only blame yourself. If you feel good that particular day, you can go fast. If you feel absolute rubbish, you can go and have a coffee or two or three. Yeah.
Are there any, just before we move on to the cycling and talk about what you've done in terms of the long journeys, are there any parallels, do you think, that you can use or that you make use of with the mountaineering and the approach that you take to mountaineering that help you either in the road cycling or in the touring? Are there things that you think, yeah, I can do that better, or I can cope with that better because I've got this experience as a mountaineer?
Yeah. First thing that springs to mind is goal setting. It's not just to do with sport or whatever. I think this applies to anything in life. If you set a goal that is too far ahead, the chances of failing to reach that goal increases. So if you set your goals, staged goals, example, Everest, for instance, because it's an easy example. I did the south route from Nepal, not from Tibet, and that divides itself up into 4 very distinct stages. And you think about getting to the first stage, and then the second stage, then the third, and then obviously the summit being the fourth. If you were to think about summiting, that's such a vast way in front of where you are at the moment. Its achievability is more daunting. So if you break it down, and even down, say, supposing you're cycling up the Tourmalet or the Haltercam or any of the long classic climbs, if you think about just getting to the top, you think, oh dear me, that is one hell of a way still to go. But if you say the next bend, or I'm going to do another 200 down pedals on the left foot, yeah, and then break it, and you get to that 200, and you've said to yourself, perhaps you might have a stop, and then you get to 198, you think, come on you wuss, keep going. Yeah. So it's taking it in bite sizes, really.
Yeah. That's also a parallel with writing a book, of course, which you have done, about your recent trip across Europe. I think if you think about writing the final word of the book, you're never going to start and write the first one, because it's just so far away. But to do it in little chunks, chapters, and think about each chapter at a time makes it a far more manageable thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And also what helped me was I did a blog throughout, like you do excellent blogs, but that helps retrospectively because you can refer back to it, and it kick-starts the memory, and you can then jump into actually going back to that particular day or that particular incident. I had one particular incident which I didn't need any blog to remember, and that was waking up at the wrong end of a rifle on one morning. A gentleman, I don't know, actually I have worked out why he objected me being in his field. I'd pitched a tent wild camping, and I'd disturbed some deer the previous night. And I thought I was dreaming. I actually write about this in the book. And I heard this dream that this gentleman was saying in a very gruff Danish voice, "You need to go now." So anyway, it was reality. And I unzipped the tent to face the wrong end, as I say, of a rifle. And he told me in no uncertain terms that it would be very bad for me if I was there when he came back. And I worked out that probably I stopped him putting some venison in his freezer. But who knows?
Perhaps he was just having a bad day.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in more detail in a few minutes, but you did a trip across America. How did that come about, and what was that like as an experience?
The trip across America was fantastic. It was a full spectrum of emotions. The chap I did with, I didn't organise it. I had a freebie on that one. Andrew, very good friend. We used to babysit for each other's daughters, and they're now well into their 30s. He planned a trip very meticulously, as Andy does, from Seattle to Boston. And it was a credit card trip, and by that I mean we didn't have much luggage at all. Road bikes, 40 days, and we did 4,000 miles, and it was about 100 miles a day. But that was quick. Again, you're living out of each other's you're 24/7 with each other, and we are great mates, but we're very different characters, and it worked well. But it was very different to the Tarifa to Nordkapp.
I was about to say, is that the journey across America? Do you consider that road cycling or cycle touring?
That was road cycling. We didn't really do any sightseeing at all. We stopped at Mount Rushmore, Rapid City, just beyond Mount Rushmore, various other places, but we were on a mission. Andy was still working then, and he had a time scale to keep to. So, and I also I had a couple of passengers as well. I named them Mr. and Mrs. Boyle and Baby Boyles. Now cyclists will know all about boils, so it was painful. But they came and they went, as these things do. But
and during that trip, were you repeatedly thinking, this is great, but I would love to do this again, or perhaps something similar where I take my time? I don't necessarily have to rush through every day of cycling. I can stop and do a bit more sightseeing. I can take time to meet people. Was that something that you thought about a lot during that America trip?
I didn't think about it that much. It's a bit of a dilemma, really. I wouldn't do the trip again because it sounds a bit blasé, because it's been done, but more importantly, there are so many other places that I haven't been to and would very much like to go and see. So to go over the journey, or even change the journey slightly, it's been done, and I'm not decrying the way it was done at all. As I say, Andy put it together, and he put it together beautifully, how it all worked. I'm pleased I did it. I'm very pleased I did it, but it's just different to cycle touring and getting immersed in things. And by definition, if you do it that way, the whole thing takes longer. And the time on that particular Seattle to Boston trip, the time wasn't available. I'm very grateful to him. I really am. Got an awful lot from it. But the slower approach for touring ticks my box, or ticks my boxes more. But that's not to say I don't thoroughly enjoy going for really fast rides.
Do you consider I might edit this question out because I'm not sure. I've kind of got half of the question in my brain. I haven't worked out what the full question is yet. But I'm trying to think about mountaineering, and mountaineering is it closer to cycle touring or road cycling? Is it a mad rush to the top, or is it something where you can keep stopping, chatting? I mean, clearly you're not going to meet the locals in the local cafe halfway up Everest, but is it something where you do have that opportunity to sit and take in the surroundings, take photographs, just think about where you are, or is it more akin to the road cycling where you're going from top to bottom really as fast as you have to, or you need to, perhaps for safety reasons or the weather or things like that?
That's a really good question. It's definitely equivalent to road touring, cycle touring. Not to appreciate the surroundings where you're going, because I consider myself immensely fortunate in having been able to go to these mountains, and for whatever reason didn't have to revisit them. Not that I would mind revisiting them, but I didn't have to revisit them because I summited on the first occasion. And that was luck. It was a whole series of things, right? Luck and ability and whatever you want to throw in there. But certainly on all the high mountains, if you were to rush at them, the chances are that you would not succeed in getting to the top. You would land up with high altitude sickness, edema of some sort, or pulmonary, or the chances of failure would be massively magnified. So when you go up, I mentioned Kilimanjaro earlier, they say poli poli, which is slowly in Swahili, and you do go slowly. You have to go slowly, and the higher you go, you might make one step and then have a second break, or break of a second, and then you have another couple of steps. The oxygen levels are less than half of what's at sea level. So even getting out of your sleeping bag or putting your boots on in the morning can take 10 minutes and you're puffed. So it's got to be a steady, measured approach.
So from that, I'll take it as a compliment to all cycle tourists that they've probably got more chances of getting up Everest than, say, Geraint Thomas or any of the top-class Tour de France riders.
The immediate answer to that is yes, but there are several riders. I don't mean riders, I mean cycling riders. There are several conditions. If you threw those in, their immense fitness, it's phenomenal. It's like I've cycled up some classic climbs, but I haven't done 200k before in a race, and finishing on the top of a classic climb, they are phenomenally fit.
Right, so moving on to the journey that you did from Tarifa in Spain to Nordkapp in Norway, so the geographical southernmost point of Europe to the geographical northernmost point of Europe. What initially gave you that inspiration? I think I might know the answer here. What initially gave you the inspiration, the idea for doing that particular ride?
You did, Andrew Sykes. Well, actually, I did take one step behind that. My wife very kindly got us a couple of tickets to come and listen to you giving a talk in Halifax in 2017, I believe it was. And you and I had a very brief chat afterwards, and the embryo of seed was sown then. So,
were you already thinking of doing something? Was it simply that you came along to that talk and thought, that's not a bad idea? Had you already thought, yes, I'm going to do something in Europe or somewhere as a follow-up to that American ride?
I had, but also on the cards was canoeing down the Mississippi, which you don't need a bike for.
Was that because, did you see Ken Robertshaw's talk?
I did. I know Ken Robertshaw very well.
Right, okay.
He's a good friend. Yep.
Because that's what he did.
He did. Yes. Yeah. And again, since going along to listen to him, we actually share common interests in motorcycles as well. But we digress. So there was that. I've also got several other. I'd very much like to cycle Japan. I was thinking about a particular ride in South America. but I think that's probably gone now. So Japan. I've also got some mountains I still wish to climb, and hopefully later this year we're going to do the Eiger. So we'll see about that.
Right, well, getting back to the cycling across Europe, can you briefly just talk about the route that you took across Europe?
Right, okay. Starting at Tarifa, just carried due north on the N6, you'll correct me on this, the 630,
Yeah,
I
the
think it was.
N630.
Yeah. Right there about, it took 2 weeks leaving Tarifa, the Mediterranean, to actually hitting Biscoe Bay, yeah.
When you were in Spain, did you plan on following the N630 or did you try and follow the Via de la Plata cycle route?
No, I wanted 630 because again I was thinking where yours and my route differ a bit. I was trying to throw in as many of the classic cycle climbs en route. Most were successful, some weren't because it's still fairly early in the season, and the Tourmalet, for instance, was shut because of snow. So I got to the north coast of Spain, then travelled east through the Pyrenees to Lourdes, then had about 5 days in Lourdes, picking off the classic climbs there.
Is that a good base to do some of the classic climbs?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and then met my wife who flew out. We had 5 days in Lourdes there.
Did you have God on your side, do you think, when you were in Lourdes, pushing you up those mountains?
Probably not. I have little belief as a consequence of certain things that have happened in my life. Yeah, and again, in the book I've written, I actually venture into those areas. So we'll park that one for now. So from Lourdes up the west coast, or up the coast of France, and then David Cronk, who is a mutual climbing friend, met me, and we cycled across to Fontainebleau, Loire Valley, and then through Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, through Denmark, and then I had a bit of time to spare. I got ahead of myself a bit, so I went up to the north coast of Denmark with a brief thought of going across to Norway from the north coast of Denmark, but didn't. And I'm really pleased, actually. All right, we had the rifle incident in that area, but then I met a fantastic lady, Joya, and she's a cyclist. She was cycling around the North Sea, all the countries that border the North Sea. And she and I bumped into each other 2 or 3 times. And I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning this, but she had a little accident when she was a youngster on a bike, and a lorry ran over her leg. And in the end, it resulted in amputation. And she's an absolutely fantastic lady. She really is. Awe-inspiring. We did the trip across to Gothenburg, just chatting, and then she took off from Gothenburg. I had a couple of days there, and then my wife and I met up in Oslo again, and then did the same route as you did, going up the west coast of Norway, and then went all the way up, saw the midnight sun, and then met my wife again in Tromsø. And then we treated ourselves to a Hurtigruten ferry, if you can call it that, mini cruise, back down to Bergen.
Yeah, that's the way to finish it.
It is.
Not cheap, but that's the way to do it. What was the average number of kilometres that you were covering each day on the ride?
About 100. Yeah. And the elevation or climbing was 95,000 metres of climbing, which is, put it back into Everest, it's about 11 Everests, I suppose.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, but you never get your bike up Everest.
No, wouldn't want to.
And was that, presumably that was well within your, I think I averaged, when I did it, my average was about 75 or 80 kilometres per day. So presumably that 100 kilometres was well within your comfort zone. And did that allow you to do all the other things, the visiting, the tourist bits, the meeting other people that you wanted?
Yeah. So it's 78 days, I think, 78 days cycling it was. But then, unlike you, I cheated because I had 5 days off in Lourdes, 5 days off in Belgium, 5 days off in Oslo.
Well, that's interesting because you said 78 days of cycling and you averaged 100, so basically 7,800 kilometres from Tarifa to Nordkapp. I averaged, as I say, around 75. 76, 77, something like that, and I did it in 100 days of cycling, so again 7,800 kilometres, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's
not surprising, but
interesting. It's it's a slightly different way of doing it, but then not for me, not to cycle past the base of these incredible mountains and not to have a bash at doing them. No, I on another project as well, I'm slowly working through doing all the classic climbs in Europe on the bike. Wow. I'm eating away at them, but I'm getting a bit older now. It's getting a little harder.
And in terms of the things like the accommodation, you mentioned going across America, it was a credit card thing, so presumably you just booked into a hotel whenever you got to wherever you were getting to. Were you camping on the trip across Europe?
Yeah, primarily wild camping. Certain.
Is that out of choice, or do you prefer wild camping?
I prefer wild camping, but without the smell of having had 5 days without a shower. So probably every 5 days or so, my wife would book me into a sort of a hotel of some sort. So I'd get a shower and again swimming in the sea, swimming in Norway in the fjords, which are very cold, very, very cold. It's very refreshing. But no, wild camping, and again, it's a long time. The cost of it. If you get bed and breakfast every night, then it's going to cost you a lot. And the bank manager might have something to say about that. But I stopped at some campsites, but not many.
Did you get the chance to meet the locals in the way that you wanted to and spend time with them?
Yes, did. Not as many. It was easier to get into conversation with other cyclists or people walking. There was a German lad walking his Alsatian, and this was in Denmark, and he had left home weeks beforehand.
You're not going to be invited to any Denmark tourist board visits in the future. The poor country, Alsatians, people with rifles.
Oh no, the Alsatian had his own rucksack, and this guy, as I say, he was on a walking holiday with his German Shepherd. I met some incredible people. I really did. There was, and I don't know her name. It's a young lady. It was absolutely chucking it down with rain, and I'd retreated to a bus shelter. Well, the bus pulled up, excuse me, and a wheelchair was taken off the bus by the driver, and this lady was carried in his arms down and put into the wheelchair, and she didn't have any legs at all. So unlike yours, so she'd lost both of them. And we got into conversation, and me being English, I was moaning a bit about the weather. And then she was very upbeat, and she didn't mean to, but she certainly put me in my place, because she said, well, if I had legs, I would love to cycle. And it made me feel quite rightfully a little disappointed with myself, I suppose. But having said that, there were many, many other occasions where it was just a joy to be on the bike. And you know that. And I bet you've sung at the top of your voice in these tunnels as well.
Oh, yeah. I would imagine so. Which bits of the entire route, the 7,800 kilometres, were not just the most enjoyable, but perhaps the most surprising, the bits that you thought, God, that's completely different to what I imagined it to be, and the bits which perhaps you were looking forward to, which you thought later, that was kind of a bit disappointing?
That's a difficult one. It's easy to be flippant and say the globe at the end. That's right at the end. But no, there were so many things. Disappointing bits. Oh, I suppose the actual start at Tarifa. Unlike you, I didn't have the tenacity to persevere getting through the lock gates to start at the actual start point. I cheated. But to get there, the wind was incredible, and the whole bike and myself got sandblasted, and it was like a thin layer of iron all over me, and the bike needed cleaning off immediately.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tarifa is well known not for cycling, it's well known for surfing and flying kites and things like that, and there's a reason why, obviously, and I suppose it's 50-50. You either have the wind in your direction or you have the wind against you, and you got to toss a coin and hope you're heading in the right direction.
Well, that was a baptism of fire, but there is. I suppose the first thing that was really enjoyable, and a sense of like the doors opening onto the beginning of this incredible adventure, and it was an incredible adventure, was there was a goat herdsman, and he probably had about 150 goats, and I was in a real backcountry lane. This was before Seville, and his expectation that I could speak fluent Spanish was beyond doubt. He spoke as if I understood every word, and when I expressed or told him otherwise, he just carried on speaking as if I could, and that happened numerous times. And also on a couple of occasions, people seem to, if they don't think they're being understood by you, they raise the level of their voice, believing, and they say the same thing, they believe that increased decibels will increase the understanding of what they're saying, which is quite funny. I think in a way, I don't really want to hark back to the religious side of things, but Lourdes it's a mecca for people to come who are so desperate, and maybe not so desperate, to come and seek divine intervention to get healed. I thought it was quite sad, the commercialism that's wrapped around it, and again going right back to the reason, Bernadette, the sixth child of whoever saw this apparition of the Virgin Mary, doubted initially, and then the church believed her. I think if it works for people, so be it, but I've never seen so many wheelchairs lined up on the evenings we were there, and there were about 1,000 wheelchairs, all with their occupants, and it's very sad. And if they believe and their belief heals them, that's good. But for me, it was a contradiction.
Yeah, I've never been to Lourdes, but would you, if you did the trip again, would you go to Lourdes again because it's that base for those climbs, or would you go somewhere else? I
would recommend going there as a base, and there are also plenty of places around where you can wild camp very freely, and very. There's one up the Halterkamp. This was absolutely fantastic place, and in the morning there was a temperature inversion. Which I didn't know about because I was actually in. It was really cold actually, and I thought, right, I'll cycle up to the summit, expecting it to be the inside of clouds. But then when I came out of the temperature inversion, and it was just glorious, absolutely fantastic, and the cafe was open at the top. The beginning of a perfect day that was.
I think you've done Mont Ventoux because it's on your shirt. When I climbed Mont Ventoux as part of when I was cycling around the Mediterranean back in 2013, it was the middle of August or the beginning of August, and we went from basically 35 degrees in Provence at the bottom to bloody freezing at the top, and it kind of almost ruined the event, because the achievement of getting to the top was I just wanted to get off that summit as quickly as possible because it was so damn cold.
Yeah, well, we had that on the Tourmalet the following year because, as mentioned earlier, I didn't get to the top of Tourmalet because it was shut, and there was another one shut as well. But Andy, who cycled across America with me, or I went with him. He put together another trip going across the Pyrenees, and we picked up as many of the cycling classics as we could, Tourmalet being one of them.
Bearing in mind your desire to do many of these classic climbs, did you not consider, because when I cycled Tarifa Nordkapp, I did bump into a few people when I was cycling further north in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, who'd actually taken quite a different route, and they'd headed more to the east, and they'd actually gone through eastern France and Switzerland.
Right.
Did you think of that as an option and do some of the alpine climbs?
In all, I think in the end I attempted about 14 of them, and that was enough. Again, time, I was away for a long time on the whole trip. Okay, 78 days cycling, but we had those breaks as well with my wife. If I'd taken that route, it probably would have been too long. And again, thinking about the goals, setting the goals not too far ahead. If I were to have tried to do, say, a whole stack in Austria or whatever, and then continue on up to Nordkapp, I think probably that would have been beyond my reach. But for younger people, why not?
If you had the opportunity to go back and recycle one of the countries again, which one would it be?
Norway.
Why?
It's just incredible. It's sort of okay, there's a few mosquitoes there, but you go with it. But the mountains, the scenery, it's very hard to put your finger on it. The Lofton Isles are everything that they're purported to be. But that's not to take away other things from other parts of the journey. Spain I had quite a rough deal with. Actually had snow. Quite bad snow actually. I had a horrible day. That's probably, going back to your question a little while back, I was using a Trek 7700, and all the gearing was completely iced up on it. I had a puncture. I couldn't feel my fingers. I couldn't repair the puncture. I had to pump it up every, a few hundred meters. I was freezing cold, and this was in Spain. Had quite a rough doing in Spain actually.
So actually, you were on a road bike. You weren't on a touring bike.
Hybrid bike. So it certainly ticked the boxes. Actually, I'm about to use it again. In a couple of weeks' time, I'm heading off to Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. So I'm taking that one. And that's the same bike I used with my other cycling friend, Luke, years and years ago, 2010, to do Land's End John Gross. So that bike's been used.
And it has panniers fitted as standard?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, got back from Everest, and 3 weeks after that, Luke and I did Land's End John Gross. And that was a long time ago now, let's say 2010. And the bike's still good.
You're off to the Baltic States?
Yeah.
What route are you taking in the Baltic States?
Don't know at the moment. I've got a flight booked to Riga, and then I will probably go north to Tallinn, and then head a bit east, and then south, and then, as I say, it'd be Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, circular route. It's 3 weeks.
And you're going with a friend?
No.
You're going to be solo. So you're going to be wild camping again?
Wild camping, yes. Definitely wild camping. And again, the attitude of those 3 countries to wild camping, they're very accommodating. Should be good.
Well, yeah, I'll look forward to hearing what you say, because obviously my plan for the summer is to go around the Baltic, and I'll be following the coast from Lithuania, the southern one, into I'm trying to remember the order that they appear. Lithuania, and then the middle one, Estonia.
Latvia, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia.
Right. Okay.
So Estonia, the capital of Estonia is Tallinn.
Tallinn, which is at the very
Yeah.
top.
And then
There must be a way of remembering the order that they come in. Lithuania,
Latvia.
Latvia, Estonia. Right.
that's it.
Okay.
And will you go down round to Lenin? No, it's not Leningrad anymore, is it?
St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg.
Well, clearly not.
No.
Yeah. I
So-
mean, I'd already discounted going to Kaliningrad because of the administrative formalities, and I really couldn't be bothered to spend the time needed to fill the forms in. So I'm going to get a ferry from Kiel up to Klaipėda, which is in Lithuania, and then follow the coast up. The option to go to St. Petersburg is a little bit different, or was, simply because it was possible to buy a ticket for the ferry to go from Tallinn to St. Petersburg and get a 72-hour visa to visit Russia with the ticket for the ferry. But clearly that's not an option now, so I'm just going to go Tallinn up to Helsinki and obviously cut off the Russian bit.
Yeah.
But so you're obviously going there in a few weeks' time. Any other plans for any other trips in the future?
Next week, going up to Scotland, do some kayaking, and then back for a few days and say off on that cycle trip. And then at long last, because a couple of years ago we planned this, but COVID got in the way, we're off to do some climbing. We'll do the Eiger, and also some other stuff in the Bernese Alps.
So you still are a very active climber, and the Eiger, for goodness sake, is one of the most
not
challenging.
Not in the North Face, definitely not. No.
But I mean, even so, I mean, the Eiger full stop is not a walk in the park.
No, it's and it'll be, it's going to push me, but looking forward to it. Very much looking forward to it.
My mother said to me earlier this week, in reference to the trip that I want to do this summer, the Baltic, and she looked at me and she said, do you think you'll continue doing these trips after this one? And I think the implication was from her, when are you actually going to come to your senses, Andrew, and stop doing these things and just go on holiday to Tenerife like everybody else does? I mean, you're clearly, you said you're 67 now, and by the sounds of it, you have every intention of continuing as long as you can to do these kind of things.
Yeah, the reason why I laugh is because I've had people say that to me, and my mother, who's passed now, but she said that to me a number of years ago when she was around. But no, and why not? Sort of, okay, I'm 68 in October, it's a number. I have two very good friends. One is an Austrian, Helmut. He is in his late 70s. And he is still ski instructing in the US. He's another seven summiter. Another Tim, American, lives in California. He is now in his mid-70s. All very active, and Tim has run basically all his life, and that's what's kept him going. No, I really don't see why we should stop doing these things if you get some enjoyment from it.
Other practical things like insurance.
Yeah,
I can't
70 years old.
I can't believe. I think this is about the third consecutive episode of this podcast where I brought up the subject of insurance, and it must be something that's playing on my mind. But is it? I mean, when you get older, presumably that kind of thing is a factor.
Yeah. I noticed on my insurance policy this morning. The current insurance policy I have is that if you're under 70, I have a multi-trip annual policy, and if you're under 70, you can go away for 60 consecutive days. But the day you become 70, they reduce that to 30.
Right.
Now, what's the sense in that?
Can't you just take out two different policies with two different companies to cover a longer period?
No, there's an idea. But again, sort of. I made a big faux pas on the Tarifa to Nordkapp trip. I thought I had insurance to cover it, but the period of a single trip had been exceeded. So throughout that trip, I had no insurance, unbeknown to me. And unfortunately, I didn't have to make any claim. But perhaps it's a flag for people thinking about this to, insurance is a waste of money when you get back and you haven't claimed on it. But it's pretty good if you do have to claim on it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've now got musical accompaniment in Hebden Bridge Park, but anyway, going back to we did mention the book that you've written. It's called A Life Appreciated from Spain to Norway on a Bike. Now that to me implies, that first bit of that, a life appreciated, that it's actually more than just that journey from Tarifa to Nordkapp. Do you bring in other elements, the mountaineering, other things that you've done in life?
Yeah. I don't know whether I'll ever write another book. I've been asked to write one about high altitude climbing, about experiences there, but I don't know whether I'll ever get around to it. So this book may well be my one and only. So whether it's right or wrong, I haven't thrown everything into it. It's structured. I think it's structured anyway. So there's the experiences of being in different countries, different cultures, meeting different people, realizing that every person that you pass has their own life and their own sphere of people they know, their family, their friends, their experiences. Every one of us has this. It's not just us living as individuals in isolation. We're all connected. There's, say, the culture, the buildings, the architecture of different cities. Did you suffer with, because you're on the road for so long, slotting places into where they actually fitted? Because sometimes I think, was that before that or after that? I don't know. Hamburg's a city, so things like you pick up little bits of information. Hamburg apparently has got more bridges and more canals than Venice. Now, and even now it seems alien.
But they say that about Birmingham.
But no, you pick up things. Joan of Arc, for instance, did a little bit of research into her, and what I've done in the book is there is a blog written at the time of the cycling, so it has certain emotional things in it that you feel, whether it's elation or maybe a bit disgruntled, sort of a bit of anger or whatever, and total absolute happiness and joy. So it's all there. Then I've written subsequently about it a little more reflectively, and I've put in something I've called fact factories, just basically facts about the areas that I've been to that I find interesting, a bit quirky sometimes maybe.
Did you find that an interesting aspect of writing the book, the fact that you could go back and fill in the gaps in your knowledge, do a bit of research after the trip?
Absolutely, yes. You just view things at the time, but then your views of the same occurrences after they've happened are somewhat different, or can be different.
Yes, but I think especially the negative stuff, the stuff that at the time was brutal and you didn't particularly enjoy, and you might write something at the time which could be quite critical, and then later, 6 months later, or whenever you're writing the book, you come back and you think, well, actually, that was just ridiculously funny.
Yeah. I thought it's hilarious that I actually managed to get an elbow mark down the side of a camper van as they passed me. I thought, oh, he's got a clean white line down the side of him, and it's my elbow that's done it. That was bloody close.
That story about Birmingham, it reminds me of Birmingham is sometimes referred to as the Venice of the North.
Right.
And somebody once told me that Huddersfield was once referred to or described by somebody as the Paris of the North, which made me wonder whether anybody in Paris describes Paris as the Huddersfield of the South. But
I would doubt that. I certainly would doubt that. They're different.
Are there any places, any cities that you visited that you were really surprised and you thought, wow, this is a beautiful place, I've never been here before?
Oslo, and the Proud Festival was going on when we were there, and just everybody's so vibrant and happy and engaging. Tromsø, incredible.
The setting of Tromsø is magnificent, isn't it?
Yeah, and having the northern the most northern brewery in the world.
Max beer, yes.
Yeah.
And the most expensive, I have
How
to
much did you
say.
pay for your? No.
Well, I went into the bar. I went into what we would call the brewery tap.
Where the polar bear is.
Oh, I can't remember.
There's a big polar bear in there.
I think I was the
stuffed.
only one in there, and it was just opposite the British consulate. I seem to remember. But the price of the beer was phenomenal. But anyway, I forget what it is. Thank God.
Well, I'm quite happy to say, because I'm not a Yorkshireman. Well, almost, but £15 for a pint.
Oh my
So,
God! Did I really pay that? Oh.
But no, Tromsø is quite some place. Other cities as well. Although, those two probably stand out the most.
And just to finish, you want to cycle Japan?
Yes.
When do you plan on doing that?
Well, it had been planned for year before last, and then it was planned for last year. It's not planned for this year. And
what's the attraction of Japan?
Culture and the countryside. Bearing in mind the North Island of Japan, winter's phenomenally cold, massive amounts of snow. Obviously you've got to be careful when you're cycling, you don't want to be there then. Yeah. But the landscape is so different from North to South Island. I know very little about the culture. I would like to know a whole lot more. And what better way, rather than reading on books and the internet, is to actually go there.
It is phenomenally mountainous.
Yeah.
So you'll be in your comfort zone now.
Well, that's got two-edged sword, isn't it? Comfort and comfort. Yeah, I enjoy mountains, but sometimes you think, why am I doing this? So, and also, I have a daughter who lives in Australia, and previously when we visited, we've got into the habit, not this time because I came back last week, but previously we've visited another country en route back to the UK. Whether we can tie in, my wife would very much like to go to Japan, so maybe we go for a recce beforehand, see it together, and then I go back and do the cycle ride afterwards.
She's never been tempted to join you on either the mountaineering or the cycling exploits?
She does do cycling, but she does sensible cycling. Yes. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, I think that's fascinating. I think you're an inspiration for people who might think that they've passed the point where they can start all these things. Perhaps not getting to the top of Everest, but in terms of the other things that you've been involved in, and the fact that you're still planning these in the future, I think is a testament to your not just your physical fitness, but your mental stamina as well, which must be pretty high. If people want to get hold of the book and read it, how can they do that?
Let me see now. The publisher is Brown Dog, so you can just bang that into your search engine. I'm happy for people to email me, probably best to email me, because from the interview you probably gathered I'm not always at home. So the email address is tim.relph, and that's RELPH, 54@gmail.com. And I will get back to you, but there might be a delay. I'll pick the emails up, but obviously I can't post out the books unless I'm at home.
Didn't somebody famously send an email from the first person to send an email from the top of Everest or something, or to post an Instagram picture from the top of Everest?
Probably, yes. Yeah, people are looking for firsts all the time, aren't they? Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's fascinating. And are you on social media at all? Do you use that? Have you got a website?
I have a website. Again, if you on the search engine just put in Tim Ralph Mountaineering, and that should flag up. It's not particularly active. What I tend to do is I don't want to put anything on there that's sort of mundane and things like that. But so if I go on a trip, all my mountain trips are on there. There's folders of photographs of all the mountains not all of them, quite a few of the mountains I've done. So and I take so many photographs, just occasionally some turn out all right. So there's photos on there, there's blogs on there, but I'm only active if I'm actually doing an adventure, in inverted commas.
Okay, well, good luck in the future, and thank you for speaking to me.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks to Tim for agreeing to take part. If you'd like to get in touch with the podcast, you can do so by emailing podcast@cyclingeurope.org or by posting a message either on the website itself, cyclingeurope.org, or via social media where you'll find me at Cycling Europe. You can find all the contact details at cyclingeurope.org/contact. If you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast or any of the previous 47 episodes, please consider adding a rating or review on your chosen podcast platform. You might also want to make a donation to help support the podcast and the website. Details as to how to do just that can be found by visiting cyclingeurope.org/support. And if you choose to help in that particular way, it would be much appreciated. Look out for episode 49 of the Cycling Europe podcast later in May. In the meantime, thanks for listening and happy cycling.